Hello everyone, welcome to Civil Engineering and Stuff. And in today's video, we are going to discuss about seasoning of timber. So let us first of all discuss what is the meaning of seasoning. So in the previous video, as and when the term seasoning came, we discussed in brief about the this term seasoning. Now let us discuss in detail what does this seasoning means. Seasoning is defined as the process by which excess water of timber is extracted in such a way that the moisture content of the timber corresponds to the required moisture content in timber for the environment in which it is to be used. What does this definition means? This means that the log of wood, or what we call as the timber, right? We have a log of wood. This log of wood need to be processed so that it can be used for a variety of purposes. It can be used in many ways for the construction purposes. It can be used in many way for the construction purposes. This log of wood can be processed and can be used to make furnitures. This can again be processed to make other things like utensils. You must have used various spatulas made up of wood material. Now, you see, each of these categories requires certain kind of wood as well as certain quality of wood. So, to make this log of wood or to make this timber suitable to be used for the intended purposes, this seasoning is done. What do we do in seasoning? We basically reduce, we basically reduce the moisture content of the wood. We reduce the moisture content of wood. What do? We reduce the moisture content of the wood. We have discussed previously, like having a certain quantity of moisture in the wood make it susceptible for variety of defects. If this log of wood has certain kind of moisture in it, it cannot be stored for a longer period of time. That we don't want. Likewise, having moisture in the wood makes it difficult for the processing. It reduces its strength as well as durability. So through the seasoning process, what we do is we reduce the moisture content of the wood. Simple. We reduce the moisture content of the wood so that this log of wood, when processed, can be used for the intended purposes. It can be used in variety of construction work. It can be used to make furnitures. And by reducing the moisture, we make once we make the furniture is suitable for a variety of preservatives applications. Likewise, we can use this reduced moisture wood for making utensils, right? So that is what the seasoning is. Seasoning is a process by which we reduce the moisture of the timber so that the timber can be used for the desired purposes. Okay, so this is what the seasoning is. Seasoning is reducing the moisture of the wood. Why do we reduce the moisture of the wood? So that it can be used for the intended purposes. Okay, this is what the seasoning means. Now, why do we need the seasoning process, right? We have discussed right now that the seasoning is done so that the wood become more strong, more durable, and can be fit to be used for the intended purposes, right? If it is to be used for the burning, by reducing the moisture content of the timber, now the timber is now timber can burn readily, right? If we want to use this wood to be used in fuels as a fuel purpose, it can burn easily because we have reduced the moisture content of the wood. It reduces the weight of the timber and thereby lowers the cost of transportation and handling, right? Again, once we like, there's a substantial amount of moisture that contains in a raw timber. So when we reduce this moisture, and you must have seen like tons and tons and numbers of wood are transported in a go or in a slot. So once we reduce the moisture, the weight reduces, because of which the quantity of woods that can be transferred is increases as well as the weight reduces. So it lower down the cost of transportation. The third point is that it make timber safe from the attack of fungus and insect. We have discussed about the defect in timber, and there we have discussed defect due to insect and fungus attack. And the whole reason of attacking of the fungus and insect over the timber is that it has certain amount of moisture which attracts these things, right? So by reducing the moisture content, we make the timber safe from variety of fungus and insect attack. The timber, if the moisture content is not reduced, can be subjected to cracking, shrinking, and warping. Okay, so by again seasoning process, we try to reduce these type of defect. We try to reduce the warping, shrinking, and crack defect. However, here I should mention, if seasoning process is not done properly, if this seasoning process is not done properly, if this seasoning process is not done properly, then during the seasoning process, these things may happen, especially the shrinking and warping may occur. All right, so it's very important that though through the process of seasoning, we reduce these kind of defects. However, if the seasoning process in itself is not executed properly, then these kind of defect will occur during the seasoning process. Again, through the seasoning process, we make the timber fit for paint treatment, for preservatives as well as for varnishing, especially when we are going for decorative effect of timber, like we are creating a furniture from the wood. So some necessary treatment need to be done, and for that, the seasoning process is done. And again, once we reduce the moisture content of the wood, the timber become hard, becomes stiff, becomes strong as well as durable. So through the seasoning process, we try to make the timber strong and durable. Okay, so these are the primary objective of seasoning. Now, how do we do the seasoning process? What is the methods by which this seasoning process is done? So, on and all, there are two categories. The first is the natural seasoning, and the second is the artificial seasoning. Natural seasoning, as the name suggests, we try to reduce the moisture content through a natural process. And artificial seasoning, we try to reduce the moisture content through some artificial process. Now, what is this natural process? What is this natural seasoning? Natural seasoning is when we do nothing. We keep this log of wood in an open ground, right? We have these log of wood that are available to us, and we keep these log of wood in an open ground. Let the natural air dry these wood. Okay, let this natural air dry this wood. We keep them in open ground in an with a proper sunlight, as well as there is proper air flowing, right? And with because of these two factors, because sun and air, the moisture content starts to reduce. And once we reach to a desired moisture content, then we take these woods and go for the desired commercial purposes. All right. So, what are the advantages of the natural seasoning process? The first is that through this, the moisture content can be brought down to 10 to 20% of what the initial moisture content of the wood was. It does not require any skilled supervision. The only thing that we have to do is we have to keep this log of wood in an open ground that has sufficient flow of air, natural air, and we have a sufficient sunlight. And through that, the seasoning process will take place. It's the cheapest way of reducing the moisture content, right? And the thicker a timber is, like the more cheaper it proves. All right. So though these are the advantage of the natural seasoning process, there are some disadvantages that are attached to it. The first thing, and you can very well must have guessed that it depends upon the climatic condition. So let's say you have kept these woods, the log of woods in the open ground for natural seasoning, and suddenly the climate changes or the weather changes and it starts to rain, or the flow of air stops, or the sun doesn't come out as planned, like the weather is not that clear. So of course, this seasoning process will be this seasoning process will be delayed. this seasoning process will be delayed, or it can revert back. This means that like for 5 to 10 days, the everything else was up to your expectation, and the moisture content was reducing, and suddenly it starts to drizzle, not even rain, it starts to drizzle. So this dry timber will absorb this moisture. All right. So this process is like very much dependent upon the climatic condition, right? And the second point is that it takes too much time. The second process is this is spelling mistake. It's a time-taking process. It is a time-taking process because eventually this whole phenomena is being done naturally, right? So this means that the timber or the log of wood will dry with its own pace, right? And when you are like your livelihood depends upon these log of woods, like you are going to process it, then you are going to sell it. The more the time it is going to take, the more the margin of profit will start to reduce. So it's a very time-taking process, which eventually can many a times reduce the profit margin, which can reduce the profit margin. Why it will reduce the profit margin? Because let's say it takes around 2 months. Let's say it takes around 2 months for the log of wood to reduce the moisture content to your desirable OMC, or optimum moisture content. And while if you go for some artificial technique, this the same could have been achieved in 15 days, right? The same could have been achieved in 15 days or a month. So the earlier you are able to reach to your desired moisture content, the earlier you are going to you are going to process it, and you are going to manufacture or sell the desired product. So it's a time-taking process which may sometimes reduce the margin. And the third point is that the spreading of thick timber sections, the here uneven seasoning may take place. If the timber section is thick, if the timber section is thick, then what happens is the the top part, the top part of the timber, the top part of the timber may dry out early, while the bottom part of the timber might have moisture. Right? The top part of the timber may dry out early, while the bottom part still have the moisture content. All right, so these are some of the limitations that are attached to the natural seasoning process. Right. Now, to reduce the time period of the seasoning and to execute the seasoning process more efficiently, we go for the artificial method of seasoning. So, when we use some mechanical means or techniques by which we reduce the moisture content of the timber, that lies under the category of artificial seasoning. Why do we adopt for the artificial seasoning? If I want to if I want to like say two important points for why we go for the artificial seasoning. The first one is to ensure that the time period in which the desired seasoning process is done is reduced. Second, the seasoning is done in a more effective way. The seasoning process is done in a more effective way. These are the like two main reasons why we have eventually moved toward the artificial seasoning. On and all, the overall reason for for adopting the artificial seasoning is first to minimize the defect like shrinkage, cracking, and warping. That is to increase the effectiveness of seasoning by controlling the seasoning process, by ensuring the, the the pattern in which the seasoning is done. We try to control the shrinkage, we try to control the cracking and the warping of seasoning. That is, we increase the effectiveness or efficiency of seasoning. In artificial seasoning, everything is under control. Drying is controlled. If we ensure that the seasoning is done throughout the depth of the wood, and it goes along like uniformly throughout the log of the wood. So that is again improving the efficiency of seasoning. To reduce the seasoning period, to reduce the time period, there is better control on circulation of air, humidity, and temperature, because of which we increase the efficiency of seasoning. And the wood becomes more suitable for painting and gluing. Like we control the moisture content to which we want. Like we get the desired thing that we want in a specific amount of time. So that is again why we go for the artificial seasoning process. Now, how this artificial seasoning process is done? The first one is boiling. So before I move to boiling, chemical seasoning, electrical seasoning, let me tell you, like overall, the idea is same. Like we have a chamber, right? We have a chamber. Now, if you're using the boiling technique, then this chamber is filled with water. If you are using chemical, chamber will be filled with chemical. If we are using electric furnace, then the same methodology will be adopted with respect to the passage of electric current. So on and all, there is a chamber. There is a chamber in which the logs of wood or the timber is placed, and depending upon the type of artificial process we are using, this chamber is calibrated to that process. Okay, and that specific assembly is attached. So if you talk about the boiling, timber is immersed in water and water is then boiled. Through this, what happens is this the sap wash out the moisture content, after the boiling process, it's kept in the natural atmosphere for a certain period of time, and then so that the moisture is reduced substantially. Now, this process affects the elasticity and the strength of the wood because the wood has been boiled. So what happens is the annual rings get affected by it, the overall compactness of the wood get affected by it. So to a certain extent, elasticity and the strength of wood is affected. But if we are going to use that log of wood towards a very minor works, then this artificial seasoning process can be used. It's fairly cheaper than the other artificial techniques that we are going to discuss. Chemical seasoning, which is also called as salt seasoning, and basically in this, the timber is immersed in soluble salts and then taken out and seasoned in the ordinary way. Seasoned in ordinary way means once soaked into the chemicals, the log of wood are kept into the atmosphere for drying, just like natural process. Here also, the same thing is done. In chemical treatment, the same thing is done. Again, the same thing like boiling. If chemical seasoning is not done properly, the interior surface of the timber may dry in advance compared to the exterior, and because of which the cracks may produce. That is, if this seasoning process is not executed properly, then these defects will occur. Then we have electric seasoning. Use of high efficiency alternate currents is passed, and because of this these high electric current, and the timber dries out. And it's the most rapid method of seasoning. The initial cost is high, and there is a good amount of maintenance cost that is incurred in the electrical seasoning. Right, so for small works, these electrical seasoning proves to be very expensive. This figure is an example of like kind of a natural seasoning, right? Your log of wood are kept in the natural air and they're allowed to dry out. You can see certain weights are put over the timber. The reason is that so that the warping can be avoided because we have weights put up here. So this timber during the drying will remain straight. Okay, the same is applicable to other patterns of wood, right? This is just an example figure. Any form of wood, like you can even keep the log of wood, you can keep a sheet of plywood, and like that, right? This is an example of natural seasoning. Okay, then we have kiln seasoning. And here the drying of timber is done in the air chamber. And what happens is again we have a chamber in which the air, which is fully saturated with moisture, is passed through it, and then this chamber is heated to a temperature of 30 to 35 degrees Celsius. And because of this hot air, the drying process takes place. All right. After this, we have water seasoning, and in water seasoning, what we do is we basically put the log of woods, right? Here you can see we have the log of wood which are into the water, and because of the passing of the water, the sap wash away. the sap of the wood washes away, and because of which the moisture content of the timber is reduced substantially. After the sap has been washed away, the timber is taken out for a period of 2 to 4 weeks, and general drying or storage of the timber is done, right? And the timber shrinks and dries out. All right. And one thing that need to be ensured in this water seasoning is that the direction of these log of wood should be upstream, right? The direction of these log of wood should be upstream to what the flow of the river is, so that the water can force it into the timber surface. Okay. So these are some of the artificial methods that are used for the seasoning process. All right. So I hope through this video lecture, what is seasoning, how natural seasoning is done, what are the advantages, disadvantages, and likewise same goes for the artificial seasoning. It's clear. If you have any doubts, you can always ask in the comment section. Post your views in the comment section. Like the video if you found this video lecture useful to you, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Check out other video lectures related to civil engineering. All right. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.